Hi, I want you to sit back for a moment and think back to the times when you could lie under the stars with a friend, talk about anything and everything, and just imagine a life path full of meaning, full of things that inspired and drew out passion. Imagine you're surrounded by people who have gathered over a meal and you've all sat together and you've given gratitude and you've said hello to one another and you visited and caught up a little bit on recent life changes and happenings. And yeah, there's people in the living room sitting and talking in small circles. There's people in the kitchen, working together around the stove, and others are washing dishes, but they're all there with the spirit of, hey, how can we find better ways to move in our lives? How can we build trust? How can we restore that spirit of village that we all long for? This is the essence of the Renewal of Creative Path. And I'm John Young for the H. Shields Institute. What I want to share with you is a design process that I've been working on, well, for a very long time. Really, this goes back to 1976 for me, but there's many sources and many contributors that can help us build meaningful lives. And it's all based on something we call connection modeling. If you want to know more, there's a deeper journey into this that we call the Renewal of Creative Path Toolkit. And what I'm going to do right now is take you on a journey, a summary of the Renewal of Creative Path. That way you can drop in with friends and family. You can watch this short slideshow, listen to my words, or make up your own words over the slideshow. It doesn't matter to me. Whatever makes it work for you to help you find meaningful steps in your life path. Nature and culture are bound together. When we talk about nature, we often think about that which is outside of our body, but I want you to think about you as a body that is nature. We are nature. There's a nervous system within our body that has an ancient design, an ancient imperative. And that imperative, you might say, is survival. We are literally hardwired for survival, but we are also hardwired for connection, because that was part of what made humans really, really functional and really successful in that survival context. So when we work on Renewal of Creative Path, we're literally awakening that hardwiring and activating our nervous system at a higher level. Maybe this is what Richard Louv means by nature smart. And he talks about the fact that the future belongs to the nature smart in his second most recent book, The Nature Principle. And when we say the future belongs to the nature smart, we're talking both about people who have found and reactivated that nature within themselves by connecting to the nature outside of themselves, but we're also talking about people who have what I would call an interdependence consciousness, people who are understanding that we are all part of a living system and that we are not separate. And as such, we will work together and find a way to create a good world. So in the spirit of that, what does it mean for you and me and our families and our friends to awaken that natural part of ourselves that Richard Louv has named nature smart? The essence of this is in the essence of understanding what culture used to do for people all over the world forever and ever, hundreds of thousands of years until more recent times. The vision and mission of H. Shields is to get people, all people of the world, to the 8 attributes of connection, the quiet mind and expanded senses, where our creativity really peaks, to that awakened happiness of a child, to the vitality and abundance of electricity in our body that lets our passion turn into energy and allows us to move on our path with total energy in our bodies. It's also about us finding that commitment to unconditional listening to other humans in our lives, that essence of mentoring, and to develop empathy, connection with nature and people, and to feel what others are feeling, to activate that truly helpful spirit in all of us, to awaken our vision, and to help us develop that inner drive to take initiative to make the world a better place, applying our gifts in a good way. That deep sense of gratitude for life itself. I'm fully alive because I absolutely just relish this moment that I'm in right now. Compassion, unconditional love, and forgiveness. These are the attributes of connection. And in the language of the elder who first taught me about these attributes, he said, well, when you translate ROCP Shakoin Wakan into English, that word ROCP, it can mean attributes, it can mean goals, it can mean law, and it can mean metrics. But what I like to say is that law, which I put in quotes for a reason, is really a reflection of our neurobiological hardwiring. When we move things in parallel to how this system is set up to work, it is optimized. The reward for that, attributes of connection. When we have these attributes of connection, that means all of our nervous system is fully activated and we are fully occupying our being. When we do that, our gift rises out of our center and begins to emerge through our voice, through our eyes, through our actions. We have found our gift. When we own the attributes of connection and we really live them and know where they're coming from and how to keep them going, we start to walk a path with meaning and power and purpose. And in essence, this is what the renewal of creative path is all about. We all know, at least subconsciously, how educational modeling works. That's represented in the lower right-hand side of that diagram as nature information. The educational system is well developed, it's well understood, it has its own metrics, its own processes. In the same way, we know about recreational modeling. We know how to play, we know how to enjoy ourselves outside, we know how to walk, ride our bikes, hike, ski, surf, whatever it is that helps us recreate in nature. This is what we call nature experience. Those two sides of the 4 quadrants diagram are known well to us subconsciously. But what is not known much anymore in modern times is the upper side of the 4 quadrants diagram. But in healthy cultures, all 4 of these are in balance. And we can, as designers of our own lives, bring all 4 of them back into balance simply by knowing what they are and what they have to do. Connection modeling is a direct conversation between our nervous system and nature itself. All the research says that children who grow up able to play with other children in an unsupervised way, in other words, no parents, no program, they wander around on their own initiative and their instincts lead them to the right place, right time, right experience, and their connection system is activated. So in some ways, when we think about nature connection modeling or connection modeling, human connection modeling, it's all that timeless, unsupervised wandering time we had with friends in high school when we stayed up all night under the stars talking about everything, right? There was no program. There was us following our hearts. The deep nature connection side of the quadrant diagram is where culture acts, and we call it cultural facilitation or cultural mentoring, where we deliberately aim for that little diagram in the upper right-hand corner, which is the 8 attributes in a person. And a healthy culture makes sure that everybody is fully activated into those 8 attributes where their gift can really shine. Because this is what success meant for hundreds of thousands of years for a human being. This is what our neurological system expects. This is what our instincts expect. And when it doesn't happen, we have different levels of disappointment. We lose trust in people, we lose trust in society, and we kind of lose our way. So what we're going to do with Renewal of Creative Path is look at how we can, become designers of the restoration of these cultural facilitation tools into our lives as parents, as friends, as family members, as parts of, members of teams, and so on. The Renewal Creative Path is at the heart of all that we do at 8 Shields. It's literally right at the center of all our processes and programs. We use the Renewal of Creative Path to actually design and envision 8 Shields, the organization itself. We use the Renewal of Creative Path to help communities globally develop their own regional patterns and understandings of how they're applying connection modeling and cultural facilitation in their regions. And there's, really, truly great success happening everywhere because of this model. This is a form of activating connection through the imitation of natural and very familiar processes. It's literally hidden in plain view. We're activating a wiring system that we were born to activate. And these are our intentions. There's not so much a philosophical intention as more of a basic ergonomic intention. We want our nervous system optimized. We want our connections optimized. We want to activate our gift within ourselves. We're going to look for a moment at what I like to call the ecology of law. There's this concept in anthropology of these three kinds of laws that, sort of, let's just say, original cultures look at. In modern times, we're really aware of human-made law, mainly because it's flourished into this very complex ecosystem that has layer upon layer upon precedent that just expands like this giant living organism that never goes away. And this is the practice of law and laws that govern commerce and all the things that we experience day to day, right? But in original societies, when people were living according to that blueprint, that original neurology, human beings paid attention to these three kinds of laws, and they made sure that they considered sacred law and natural law before they made commitments in the form of human-made law. And in the sacred, and this is our logo, the red, yellow, and green. At the center, you see those three sticks. That's what they represent. Sacred law is also what we would call connective law. And in modern times, we don't really have ritual and ceremony to hold this knowledge. However, we do have the ability to step back and look with our open minds and our open eyes and to consider what is at the heart of sacred law, which is those things that cause us to feel connected, those things that enhance connection with ourselves, with each other, with nature, with our ancestors, with the future generations. Natural law is all that we learn from direct communication with nature, direct impact of deep relationships built with the natural world where we get to see how everything works in nature. Human-made law in ancient times was based on the observations of wisdom keepers, elders, of how the connection law and how the natural law interplay. And they made sure that all human-made laws were in harmony with that. In some ways, I'm asking you to go back to that original pattern and say, okay, I can't really control, this flourishing of complex human law as it exists on the books today. But what I can influence is the commitments that I make within my own life, with my family, with my friends, with my relationships. I can create my personal conduct agreements, my own personal human-made law that puts me in a healthy relationship with nature, myself, and others. Let's look for a moment at the essence of the renewal of creative path. The word creativity is there. The essence of creative path is creativity. And I want to ask the question, then what is the nature of creativity? In James Lovelock's Gaia hypothesis, he observes that the natural systems, the phytoplankton in the ocean, the various organisms, the trees on the landscape, that all of them act as if they're being governed by one intelligence that seems to be holding the whole planet in some kind of homeostasis, keeping the whole planet in some sort of relationship with itself that allows it to be inhabitable, And then the question was asked, by Paul Hawken in his book, Blessed Unrest. All these people around the world who follow their creative impulses, who may have done something similar to renewal of creative path in their own life. They found and tapped into something within themselves that they felt passion to follow. And in so doing, they manifested, a movement to help make it better for women in the world, or they manifested a movement to make equal rights important, or they did things to help, the oceans. But all around the world, hundreds of thousands of people, all at the same time, seem to follow some internal mandate that when you step back and look at the whole thing as a giant, concert, of musicians playing together in harmony, number one, they didn't know about each other, but number two, they all worked in synchrony, as if that same intelligence of the earth was acting on the creativity of each individual. And there is a belief shared between James Lovelock and Paul Hawken and myself and many others out there that a human creative endeavor is the immune system of our planet. And I have so much anthropological evidence to back this up in my mind that it's no longer a question. I believe in our times we each need to find that meaningful path that comes from our passion and creativity and helps us to invent a new world through our own endeavors. Michael Meade talks about mythology and anthropology, again, looking at traditional cultures around the world, and he recognizes that every culture sees that every human was born with a gift, and that gift needs to be unwrapped and revealed to the world. But as they're children and they're growing up, their gift reveals a certain kind of sensitivity and vulnerability, and because of that, they feel injury in many stages of their life, especially their early life, and so their gift becomes hidden by the wound. And in Renewal of Creative Path, we look both at the gift and the wound and how they're wound together. And if you want to go deeper into this, the Renewal of Creative Path Toolkit will take you into a deeper journey of examining this relationship. And I recommend it for anyone who really is deeply curious about their own path. But for now, we can at least look at how to make quality of life improvements through our design efforts. The roots of the Renewal of Creative Path are deep. They go back through my mentor, Tom Brown, who mentored me from 1971 till 1979 when he opened his now famous tracker school. But through my boyhood and into my teen years and into my young adulthood, he was my mentor and helped me work on a very traditional version of Renewal of Creative Path where I asked very specific questions of myself. And I unwound my life path, which I am currently living in today. You could say that since 1979, I have not really veered from my life path. I've had some jobs here and there along the way, but I've fully embraced my Renewal of Creative Path. In later years, I began to work with an elder from Africa who got from the grandmothers and the grandfathers there a similar thing. So the Apaches mentored Tom's mentor. The Africans had a similar way of looking at things. And then I later found that the Hawaiians had a similar thing over in the island of Kauai, where I worked with my aunties there. And then later I discovered that, the Haudenosaunee people, had something similar. And I began to talk to all these different elders, and I started to see there was a pattern language to the Renewal of Creative Path. And that's what I'm about to share with you. The deepest version of this is called the Vision Quest, and you might think of the Renewal of Creative Path as a preparation for Vision Quest, and that is a good way to look at it, because in essence, when I lead people on Vision Quest personally, I make them do the Renewal of Creative Path for a year or two before we even go out for the Vision Quest itself, because I want them to take time with the questions and to really communicate with their elders and their family members and their friends, and to develop an anchoring relationship of other people, to really find their support network that helps them feel seen, confident, safe, so that they can find that meaningful life path. But if you're feeling called to the Vision Quest, the Renewal of Creative Path Toolkit would be definitely the next step after this summary, for sure. And if you're feeling called to having mentoring, know that H Shields is offering mentoring around that, and we have been for many years. And we love to support people who are right at that stage of life, or right at that place in their life's journey where they're like, I need to know who I am and why I'm here. But if this is also your first exposure to this, and all you want to do is figure out how to make next year better than last year, this will also work for you. And you can just stay right within this little presentation. I think you'll find all the tools you need. Think about creativity as something that needs to be nurtured. It has needs. Know that the most creative people I've worked with all over the world have also had those connection attributes. So I'm going to say this, that the connection attributes that I showed you a few slides back, these give rise to your creative power. Like, in other words, your gift will shine when you are connected in all these ways. Okay, so think about the need for creativity is also the need for connection. And know that in order for you to feel safe enough to connect, you need to be having fun, you need to be able to feel vulnerable, you need to know that the people around you are people who you love and trust and who have your back. Those are the times when you laugh the hardest, cry the deepest, and see the greatest insights and are able to share them in a way that they're being heard. So connection yields creativity, but connection needs safety. And safety comes from containers that support connection. And you might think back to your friendships that you've had where you knew you were safe to say anything you wanted. What were the attributes of the container itself? What made for a good container of connection? Start thinking about that now, because as your work on your creative path will be directly equivalent to your ability to feel safe to pursue it. And in all the surveys we've done recently, we've heard again and again from over 300 people that lack of community support is like one of the number one obstacles. I don't want you to resign because you can't look around right now and name the people who support you. But instead, I'd like you to understand where that support comes from and think about how to put it back. That could be part of your renewal of creative path. Design, intend, and build good containers. What does it mean to have friendships that can create that safety, that love and trust that allows you to fully connect, that allows you to become fully creative, to become who you really are? You can work with the renewal of creative path in this context of connection and very intentionally build containers that help you feel safe to grow. If I'm speaking to a group right now through this slideshow, that's what you're doing. What does it mean to help each other feel safe? So the first thing is that everybody needs to feel that they're welcome in the group itself. And this is an ancient tradition that goes to all cultures that I've studied around the world. They put a great deal of emphasis on welcoming. What does it mean to be truly welcomed? Can you relive moments when you felt really, truly welcome? What were the aspects of that experience that made it so? And can you recreate that? Yes, you can. You are hardwired to do so. One of the things that people do, I'm borrowing this term, the road dust, from my friend Jake Swamp, who's now an ancestor. He was a traditional Mohawk leader. He said, we always take time to wipe off the road dust. And that means allowing people to tell the story of their travels and to kind of, off-gas all the stresses of the road. And then give them some tea, show them where they can rest, where they can use the bathroom. And then really welcome them in, to the time when you gather as a circle. So if you're in a group, make sure that if you're going to do renewal of creative path, take time to visit and to wipe road dust. Take time to welcome each other, and then sit together in a quiet, open space and give gratitude. What we find today in modern times works great is for each person to say, I'm John, I'm from SoCal, California, I drove here today from there, and I'm feeling really grateful today for the beautiful sunshine that shone and dried the land that has been soaked by the rain, which I'm also thankful for. And then pass it to the next person and let them all speak. And after 8-10 people speak from their hearts and kind of welcome themselves into the circle and say their gratitude, say their name, people will get pretty emotional because connection is already starting to happen. That builds safety right there. Create a support system for yourself. If you're going on this journey of renewal of creative path, remember what I said a little bit ago. Your effectiveness in uncovering your own meaningful path will be almost directly equivalent to the amount of support that you feel. So find a friend that can share this journey with you, and you can share this slideshow with them, or a group, and set intentions and set commitments to make some time to host this conversation. I'm going to get to a place, I'm doing an overview now, but then I'm going to go through 7 steps. You could literally, have 7 meetings, 1 for each step, or you could have one evening where you do 3 of them one night and 4 of them the next night, a week later. It's up to you. But essentially, find a friend or a group with intention and the commitment to follow through on this, to support each other, because we're all suffering from that lack of supportive community, and this is how we rebuild it. And I know this is true because I've led this in communities all over the world, and there's literally hundreds of communities practicing this every year, at least once a year, and setting aside a month or 2 to go through this process where people journal on their own and come together, sit together, share meals together, and have this experience. So let's review quickly some connective conduct principles, and there's really only 4 categories of conduct principles that you need to pay attention to create that group safety around renewal of creative path. Number 1, cultivate that peaceful feeling where everybody feels good to be there. And again, that's road dust, welcoming, gratitude, but also, the little things, food, water, tea, whatever it is that creates that healthy, beautiful feeling environment where we all come together, right? So cultivate peace as number one. As number two, work on sharing your words from your heart and give everybody the chance to be fully heard. Nobody interrupts, nobody gives advice. People listen deeply. They just go into the quiet place within themselves and hear each other's words and really listen deeply to each other's stories. That's what we call the good message. And then the third one, work from a place where your body feels the unity emerging in the group. You don't have to have an ideological agreement, but just a felt sense in your body that you've reached a point of unity. So that peace, that good message, that unity, conduct your group meetings according to those. Everyone commits to that. It's simple. It's really kind of do unto others what you'd want them to do unto you, and just holding that good open space. The fourth place is when people become emotional, for all of us to really be able to drop in and listen and to give them the chance to really have their heartfelt tears expressed. That's catching each other's story, listening for their what they're feeling, their grief, their concern, their inner trauma around moments when they didn't feel so connected that are coming up right now, and really listening and supporting each other through that process that comes up when we start to go into connection. So you need that connective container to hold this process. Again, it could just be you and your journal, but it could be you and a good friend, or it could be you and your partner in life, your life partner, or it could be you and your family. It could be you and a group of people from your community. All of them I've seen work, and they work wonderfully. In traditional communities, intact villages, sometimes the whole clan does this kind of thing, for 8-9 days, like in the case of the Mohawks, or in the Hawaiian community that I've been adopted into. They'll start this process in October, and they'll meet kind of regularly and have picnics by a beautiful riverside, and they'll have these discussions as families over the course of several months, for 1 day a month, whatever works for you, whatever works for your group. But if you find a group to do this with, this can really literally transform your life and theirs. So the renewal process, in a nutshell, remember I said earlier, there's 7 distinct steps, and you could literally have 7 meetings with your community group, or you could do it all in one night and just kind of go through it, or 1 day. But however you do it, there's 7 steps. We look at what connects us in our lives, what we learn from that. We write into our ideal scene journal. We look at what blocks connection as step number 2. We look at how we could sort of transform those blocks, and we write that into our ideal scene journal. Step 3, we look at the synchronicity patterns of our lives. What's the flow history of common patterns in our lifetime? And then we learn from that from discussions with others, and then we write that into our ideal scene. And then we ask others to tell us, what are our gifts and our talents? We go to our mothers, our grandmothers, our grandfathers, our uncles, our best friends from childhood, our coworkers. We ask them, what do you see as my gift and my talent? And we create that inventory. And then we build that. We note that into our ideal scene journal. And then we look at stepping stones. And these are the big moments in our lives where we had these big ahas about what we really felt passionate about. This is what I always wanted to do. This is what I know I'm born to do. And if you don't have those moments in your memory, rest assured they're there. They're just hiding under a couple of layers of memory. And if you do Renewal of Creative Path as an annual thing, every year you get together with people and do this, those stepping stones will emerge. We all have them. It's a reflection of our gift. But if you know a little bit about your stepping stones, or if your grandmother feeds back to you and tells you about your stepping stones, write it in your ideal scene journal. And in step 6, we start looking at the fact that, gosh, our instincts told us this is how the village should show up for us. This is how our friends should show up for us. Our instincts said this is how our parents should show up for us. But because they didn't grow up this way and they didn't have the support, they didn't show up in the way that our instincts told us they were supposed to. And we may have become angry and bitter, and we might have closed off connection with key people in our lives. And so we ask people to look at those stories and see if you can release them and transform them, because any resentments held towards others in our lives blocks connection overall. Then finally, after releasing and kind of getting into that space where we've kind of cleared the table, we've set the table, and step number 7, we basically generate our ideal scene. We look at all these patterns we've written in our notebook and we say, well, what if in the next year I do more of this that connects me? I adjust these things that don't connect me and deal with them in a different way so that they're more connective. And I look at the things that are in harmony with the synchronicities and my talents and gifts that people have seen in me, and I try to do more of that. It doesn't mean quit your day job. It might mean doing slightly different things within your day job. It might mean doing some things in your free time, but starting to build on that, and slowly but surely, without having to spend money, without having to go to college, you begin to see a new life path for yourself. And the renewal of creative path, involves these 4 intersecting strands that support the journey, in a healthy culture. And for the sake of this summary, I'm not going to go into great detail about all of them, but I'll touch on them lightly. If you want to go deeper, then please check out the Renewal of Creative Path Toolkit. We used attributes of connection, number 1, the purple strand, as a self-tracking, a self-diagnosis mirror, essentially. We look at all the attributes and we say, when have they been strong? When have I had the quiet mind? When have I felt happy? When have I felt vital? What was I doing? Who was I with? What were the patterns in that? And then we note that to our ideal scene. We look at what we call the handshakes supporting connection, because globally there's a conversation among community leaders who work with the 8 Shields model. And we've come to these 8 handshakes that support our journey on the attributes. I'll give you a couple of them right now. Like the East handshake says, nature connection seems really important for our overall neurological health and journey. So we're going to incorporate nature connection core routines as our foundation. And the Southeast, handshake says, well, in order to fully, incorporate those core routines of nature connection, I need people to support me on this journey, like mentors. I'm going to have friends also do the same thing at the same time so that I can co-mentor with them. And if you wanted to get into more detail on that, but just know that there's some basic foundational principles that we've learned from 30 plus years of doing this that are similar from community to community. And when people align with those design principles, things tend to go better. So we'll make sure that you can get a simple handout of what the handshakes are in case you want to use them as a self-tracking tool too. They give you design ideas. But whatever you see out of that, you add that to your ideal scene. The ideal scene itself is basically looking at all the notes that have accumulated in your ideal scene journal from the process, and you ask the question, where am I now? And where do I want to be when? And you sort of set some basic goals for yourself and set some basic commitments. You enact human-made law for yourself, in a sense, and you anchor that with friends and supporters, and you do your best. It's a work in progress because, we're overcoming a lot of disconnection from hundreds of years of disconnected practices in Western society. It's not something we can put back in a day. So we're patient, we learn from our experience, and we learn from each other, and we listen and support each other. And then finally, that renewal flow. You're going to do things, answer questions, and share stories with others, especially people who can anchor your stories. If you tell them to people, they listen. They don't have to give advice. They don't have to pass judgment on you, but they can listen unconditionally and help anchor you in your own story about what you're learning. And the other way that we work on the renewal flow is the solo journaling we do. We sit by ourselves, we look at these questions, and we write about them to ourselves, and we start to call up stories and experiences and start to do some, self-analysis and design. All those flow together to create the renewal of creative path. You'll need a support system, and that support system includes an ideal scene journal, something that's specifically set aside for you to take notes as you go through this process. It really helps to have friends and family who support you specifically on this journey. They know you're going on the journey, maybe they are too, and you're listening to each other's stories, setting time aside to catch each other's stories with each step, and they're supporting you to do it. And then there's the questions themselves, which will come next. These are also supportive to you. And then as you learn things. It's great to have somebody to share this whole thing with, and it's even more awesome if you have like a little community of people to share them with, coworkers, team members, family members, a friend circle that's more on the informal side. Whatever it is, these things will support you. So let's go on a journey through these questions, short and sweet. The first question: what connects me? Look at those attributes one by one and simply ask the question, when do I feel I have the quiet mind? Who's there when I feel that way? Where am I when I feel that way? And what am I doing when I feel that connected? And there may be several patterns in there, but note them all down and add them to that ideal seed journal. And the simple question, how can I do more of these? The second question, it's kind of the opposite question. Well, what disconnects me? Look at those attributes again, one by one. Who is there when I am disconnected? Ask the question why. It may not be their fault. It might even just be an unspoken agreement that neither of you wants that's just governing your conversations. Where am I when I feel disconnected? What am I doing when I feel disconnected? Look at that and ask those questions. And ask the question, how can I do less of those things that cause me to be disconnected? Or how can I transform the things that make me feel disconnected to become more connected? And add that to your journal. The third question, how has synchronicity and that flow history of things that repeat in my life informed me? How do they inform when I track myself on my own life journey to this point? What are the repeating patterns, positive and negative? What are the synchronicity patterns that happen in nature or with people or with certain music that move in my life? We all have them. And when we start asking the right questions, we start to see them. And they start to point at our creativity, because our instincts are linked to our creativity. And our instincts lead us to the right place at the right time where we have these synchronicities. Others may have observed something about you in this regard. So what have others observed about this with me is another question. What's this telling me? How will that impact my ideal scene? Make some notes. The fourth question, what are my gifts, my vision? What are my talents? Do I know? Maybe I don't. And you know why? Because that jumps down to that conflict of interest pattern a few bullet points down. My old friend Jake used to say, in his culture, they would say a person is the last person who will know what their own gift is. In other words, me, John, I don't know what my own gift is. I actually need others to reflect it to me, because I will have the highest bar of perfectionism around my gift, and I will always see that what I'm doing is substandard in that regard. So sometimes we don't know our own gift. And he also talked about the fact that second only to us not being good judges of our own gifts was our parents, because the parents had to raise us in a particular way, teach us certain skills, help us be self-reliant, and discipline certain things within our behavior. Often the gift was not revealed to the parents. And so in a healthy culture, it would be our aunties, our uncles, our grandmothers, our grandfathers, the elders in our community who would help us see our gifts. So ask this simple question, what do others see in me that I don't readily see in myself? Ask coworkers, ask best friends from childhood, ask relatives, ask people who know you well, and get them to reflect to you. But ask them, what's that telling you? How does that impact your ideal scene? That's the fourth question. The fifth question, are there memorable stepping stone moments in your life that you are aware of? What's a stepping stone moment? It's those moments, as Tom Brown said to me when I was 16, those moments when you're standing in that moment, you feel this sort of elevated consciousness, and it's like you can look back over your life and see the other moments that are stepping stone moments. And they're literally like stepping stones that seem to go from before your birth to beyond your death, and they're somehow tied to your lineage, to the time that you're living in, the history, the period of history we're living in, the great needs of our society and our times. These are the things that motivate deep passion and callings. You know what? And if you don't have any memory of any of that kind of stuff, trust me, they will show up. As you do Renewal of Creative Path year after year, you will start to remember those stepping stone moments. And sometimes the stepping stone moments as the ones that you find yourself telling others about again and again. Kind of like, hey, when I was 15, I had this moment, and it was so special to me, and it was when my coach said this to me, and my science teacher said that to me, and then my grandmother said this to me, and all of them kind of said the same thing, and I've always wondered about that. And you might find yourself repeating that with friends, throughout your life. You're aware instinctively that you have those, right? Maybe your elders, your parents, your best friends know about them, so ask them, do you remember like moments that are really big moments for me where I kind of like defined myself in those moments? That parent and self conflict of interest pattern is operating here again. Maybe parents won't see it, and maybe you won't see it, but maybe your good friends, your elders will. Again, what is that telling you, and how does this impact your ideal scene? The sixth question: what am I holding on to that needs to be released? Am I holding resentment towards others that keep me from really truly connecting to them? Because if I don't fully connect to them, I'm not connecting to me. If I'm not connecting to me, I'm not accessing my creativity. Are you holding resentments towards society for not supporting you? How is this holding you back from deeper connection? Can you release and forgive? Are you holding resentments towards friends or peers or colleagues for the same reason? Can you release and forgive? Sometimes people are like, well, why should I release and forgive? Well, that north attribute teaches us to be forgiving and to have compassion. And when we begin to realize that we all grew up in a postmodern society, and maybe our parents and even our grandparents did too, they weren't given support to do this. They didn't know how to do it for us. So the people around us probably don't have it either. Can we hold them at fault? Yes, we were disappointed when the village didn't show up for us because our instincts said the village was supposed to show up for us in a particular way, and it didn't. But can you release and forgive? Because if you can, that gives you more of your connection back and more of your creativity. This is the most important for your family members. Are you holding resentment towards those closest to you? Can you release and forgive? How will this help your ideal scene? The seventh question: generating the ideal scene. Given all we have learned through this process and reviewing our ideal scene journals and looking at our current situation with open eyes and designing for limits and challenges, what is our ideal scene going forward for this year, next couple of months, next couple of weeks, or maybe for 5 years, or maybe for our lives? And you can see that this particular process is one of those perennial processes that you could visit every year. I'm going to tell you that quite literally, starting around November of every year, I begin to review this process with my close relatives, my dear friends, my loved ones. And I carry this process through December, January, and into February. I literally put that much energy into it. It's always operating in the back of my mind at this time of year, because this is my life, and I want to know that I lived it the best way I could. And I think you do too. The ideal scene. It's a who, what, when, where, why, and how kind of thing. Who do I see more of in my life that brings me connection, that supports me to be me? What do I do more of that does that? When do I do these things? How do I incorporate them into my busy life? Can I find 15 minutes a day to do some nature connection core routines, to activate my senses more, to get the quiet mind, that kind of thing? Where am I? Where am I living? Where am I working? Where am I recreating? Where am I connecting? Where am I playing? Where am I doing the things that make me feel connected? How is this happening? What are the logistics? What are the responsibilities? What are the commitments? What are the relationships? The Renewal of Creative Path process itself has already answered the question, why? Why? Because I want to live a meaningful life. I want to know I'm connected. I want to know I'm here. I want to know that I fully lived before I died. Next steps from here, you can go deeper. Like I said, you could go onto the journey of the Renewal of Creative Path Toolkit. It goes deeper. It has a lot of readings. It has a lot of outside resources, videos to watch, audios to listen to, and it takes you on a deep journey. If you're at that place where a vision quest is right here, it's right in your face, you got to do it, well, consider that. We have a program at 8 Shields that can take you there, that has been founded by Sal Gencarelli and myself, and we can really help you go deeper and to discover that powerful you that's just hiding inside under a few layers. But do this process by yourself that I've already outlined. Do it with friends, do it with a group, however you want to do it. And if you feel called to go deeper, please, work with us on the Renewal of Creative Path Toolkit and our group mentoring process that goes with it. And if you need to go deeper still, Sal and I and the 8 Shields Institute can take you there. So in the meantime, work with others. Find people that can help anchor your journey, who can listen to you. Recognize that you need to make commitments to the routines that help you connect. Recognize that you need to have some good family conversations, some good friend conversations. Maybe you have a regional group that's, parents of students that are in nature connection programs that you can work with and that want to do this with you. Or maybe it's a working group, in your job or your vocation. But whatever it is, take some time, a few minutes a day, maybe a couple hours on the weekend to do some journaling and thinking, or maybe to have, a few potluck dinners around this for, once a week for a few weeks, or once a month for a few months, whatever it is. But just go ahead and take care of yourself and find that meaningful path and activate that place within you that is the immune system of our earth, so that we can build a better world together. Thank you.